Hey guys, welcome back to the Collab365 Summit. It's day one here, which is all about IT Pro. And I'm joined with Christina on my right. Christina, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Christina Singh-Terry, and I'm a senior content developer here at Microsoft for Microsoft Learning, and I specifically focus on SharePoint, Yammer, and a project. So, a lot of work to do right now.
And Christina is going to be talking a lot about that because this is part one. We've got part two coming after here, where we're going to be talking about your involvement with learning experience and the options that are available for you guys. But let's get back to part one of this track. We're joined with some very special guests. Just to explain, if you're wondering why we're doing this all the time, it's because we can hear ourselves a few times back in our ears, so it's messing with our heads a bit. Okay, so we're so proud to have our recruitment experts, Nigel Frank, joining us. So I'm getting this back in my head. Guys, just bring yourself in. Alec Porter, Paden Simmons, say hello.
Guys, nice to be here. Thank you very much for having us. So, just quick introductions. I'm Alec Porter. I'm a team leader for the SharePoint Contracts Division across North America. Previously based out of our London office and worked in the SharePoint contracts market for the UK over there.
My name is Paden Simmons. I've been with Nigel Frank and Frank Recruitment Group for about 5 years, specializing in recruitment for Office 365, SharePoint and Azure across the US and Canada.
And where are you guys broadcasting from right now?
So we're from our New York City office. We're on Wall Street currently. A lot of tourists out there at the moment. So, yeah, it's not a too bad day in New York. I hope everyone is well and having a good day.
Alec, you sound a bit funny for an American.
I know, mate.
We're working on that. We're working on that. Slowly.
Fairly recent transition over from the UK. So I've been over here a few months now. I've been with the business for nearly 3 years, purely working on the SharePoint contract side of things. So fortunately, got quite a bit of experience in the UK market and now over in the US as well.
So guys, our viewers at home might be wondering why we've got a recruitment guys in on the session. Can you give us a little bit of background about that?
Yeah, that's right. So between Paden and I, we've been working in this market now. We've got about 8 years of experience working in the Microsoft recruitment space. We do a huge amount of work in the community, specifically in the SharePoint space. So personally, I'm a huge ambassador and supporter of the SharePoint user groups. I was actually a guest speaker back in the UK talking about the SharePoint recruitment market, along with doing the similar thing in Texas a few weeks ago. So ultimately we're finding that because we specialize in these technologies, there's a huge amount of information that we've collated over a 10-year history as a business that we look to try and give back to candidates and clients out there to try and put themselves in the best position if they are looking for a new career, making sure that they're staying ahead of the game and that they're not getting stale because Microsoft are going through so many changes technology-wise, introduction of new cloud technology, slight changes within certain SharePoint areas, making sure that we can give this information to people to ensure that if they are looking for a new career, that they're making the right changes and we'll look to help people out as best as possible.
So my understanding is that you guys have got a lot of information to talk about today.
Yeah, that's right. So what we were looking to cover today was to kind of cover it off in 3 main areas. Because of all this information that we've collated over the past 10 years, we've got a lot of past information and data that we can share with you guys to say, look, this is what the trends have been based on what SharePoint's been doing over the last 15, 16 years. We're then going to look at how these new introductions of cloud technologies are changing things slightly now in certain skill sets, looking at hourly rates, day rates, salary rates as well, and then looking to have a discussion with you guys as to how Microsoft plans and their vision is going to change skill sets and change requirements of ultimately what clients are going to be needing. If they're going to be implementing these new technologies, they're going to need people that have got experience in doing that. And therefore, these people need to get the right skill sets and have the right organizations to help the businesses with their new projects.
So that sounds quite exciting to me, guys. Do you want to give people a bit of a background about where the market has been, kind of bringing us up to where we are at the moment?
Sure. So it's kind of mainly been, from a candidate perspective, has been split into 2 different categories: contracting options and permanent options. people there that have downloaded the PDF document, if you quickly look at Appendix 5, you'll find that from a contracts perspective, which is my area of expertise, what is a contractor? Contractors tend to have been, as a general rule of thumb, around about 6 years minimum with SharePoint. Realistically, they're absolute experts in their particular field. They're a specialist at what they do. So they're an out-and-out developer, they're an out-and-out architect, a solutions architect. They know what they're talking about. They will come in and they will work on a specific project basis. So the average project that gets set up for a contract option is between about 3 to 6 months, with about 60% of those contracting roles then going on to be extended. They tend to have come through the Gold Partner Network, so they've gone through the right certifications and the right trainings to make sure that when they come on board to a client to deliver on that particular project for a certain period of time, what we're finding is that hopefully they can add a huge amount of value as an expert. And what they can do, they can help to upskill your internal teams, grow that so you don't have to always have a contracting option there. It is only a temporary position. If they're only going to be there for a fairly short period of time, you want to make sure you get good value out of these people. The bottom of that appendix there, you'll see that there's a quote from one of our best clients that hired a number of contractors from us. They actually found over a 5-year period it was the best way to achieve excellence and the cheapest way to do that, because these guys were directly having an impact on the largest scale team, training, upskilling in the best practices possible, so that the managers and the IT directors and the CIOs could just get on with their everyday jobs and not necessarily have to worry about the upskilling and the training, because they had dedicated experts being able to do them. That's kind of the stereotypical contractor, if you like. I'll let Paden touch on the permanent side.
Right, so as Alex just mentioned, looking at that contractor profile, you're looking with 6+ years of experience in any given technology, specifically SharePoint there. When we look at the life cycle of a permanent-based candidate, you really have to start somewhere. So when we start from the very beginning, a graduate coming out of school, typically with an IT-related degree, potentially a business degree, depending which route you're going, whether that be technical or functional. From that point forward, we typically see individuals moving into their first role on the end user side, typically a power user or a user of the technology, getting their feet wet with that individual technology. Within that type of role, they start to gain that product knowledge and that product experience, potentially getting hands-on with the configurations or an upgrade potentially. Once they've got a little bit more experience under their belt, we're seeing that shift from the end user side at the 2 to 3 years of experience into joining a Microsoft partner. Where they're starting to gain more of the consultancy experience, the face-to-face experience with business users that aren't within the same company as theirs, and certainly gaining more hands-on experience. Typically, we'll see them go through certifications, proper training done by the partner of Microsoft or third parties. Once they spent some time in the partner gaining the consultancy experience, particularly that client-facing experience, we'll see them move either into a more senior role there or then potentially into a contract-based position. Once they hit that certain years of experience where they can start to proclaim themselves as somewhat of an expert in the technology, we do see a big shift into the contract market, as Alec was saying. And then what we typically see is that once they've kind of done more of that contract route, they may revert back into an end-user based position in more of that managerial capacity. Some candidates may stay in that permanent capacity depending on what they're looking for their career, long term. But we do see that big shift going to contract, and then kind of to round out the career towards the tail end, reverting back into more of a managerial position where they've got not only technical skills, they've got client-facing ability, gone through multiple upgrades, and can oversee multiple products within a company's product stack.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with that. I know that you guys got all the stats and insights into what happens in the market in the contract and permanent area. Just touching on what you said about people going from permanent to contract, do you find there's a specific timeline for that? And even further into managerial and consulting and so on?
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to the individual's personal circumstances. I think choosing contract is a personal option. A lot of people have to do it necessarily at the right time. Are they in the right place financially? Can they afford to potentially be out of work for a considerable period of time? Can they, is their family situation, does their other half or enjoy them working across the country, traveling quite a lot. You know, is their family situation there? Is a financial situation? So it's definitely a personal circumstance. And that's why I would say that on average, and just for the record as well, is that there's definitely going to be anomalies out there. I know some very, very successful contractors that made the transition much before they had 6 years of experience in the market. Very, very experienced people. Ultimately, it's just down to whether you've got the experience. So we're just talking very general here to keep things fairly simple. Yeah. But as a stereotypical type of thing, we think that if you are a contractor, the reason why a client is looking to hire a contractor is because they're looking for a dedicated expert. They need to make sure that if they're going to be paying a premium, paying some fairly high rates, they want to make sure they're getting value for money. And that's why we say that typically that person has around 6 or 7 years minimum, because they need to make sure that they have that knowledge to go into that client base and to be able to deliver. So it is a personal option, but ultimately you've got to be able to make sure that you tick those boxes before that individual makes that transition, because it is a very difficult market as well.
And do you guys go through a specific process to identify the quality of those candidates in the contract market? Because you mentioned about making sure they've got credibility, experience, and so on. Could you tell me a little bit about how you vet and validate that candidate?
Sure. So the way that it would work is ultimately, you know, we have a candidate's resume. We've gone through that with them. We discuss that with them. We get them to describe it. Recruiters are not technical people, all right? Paden and I are going to be the least technical people on this conference for the next 3 days, all right? we don't know what the difference is between C# and JavaScript, but what we need to do is we need to understand what the client is looking for and ultimately be a matchmaker. You know, I describe ourselves as a glorified match.com. We're matching people together based on certain circumstances. So we want to make sure that we're speaking with a candidate and getting their own experiences and descriptions on things and how they conduct themselves and how they answer, you know, very basic questions, how they describe that role. We'll also, fortunately, because we specialize in this market, I think we work with something like around about 86% of the partners globally. So we can see on a resume if they've worked with some big partners. We know that they hopefully would have been trained in the right ways. Because we go to a lot of the user group events, we go to a lot of conferences to meet these people. The SharePoint community is actually very, very small, and I noticed that when I moved from the UK over to New York, 50% of the people that I would speak to, we had some kind of mutual friend based back in the UK because everybody knows each other. So fortunately, what we can find is, you know, people are able to share insights. You know, that person was a great person to work with. So that helps us in being able to understand, although we're not technical, being able to try and make sure there's a least amount of risk from our client when looking to choose those individuals.
Certainly, and I think, particularly on the contract side as well, there's certain contractors that we've worked with for years and years and years, and we've had them on different contracts throughout that time as well. So we certainly leverage testimonials and references, referrals within the community, not only from colleagues, but also from direct hiring managers, direct project managers that we've placed those contractors on as well. So kind of come with that stamp of approval on actual experience that they've done through us as well.
Now, I know from personal experience that to find candidates that are willing to go from contract to permanent is extremely difficult. How do you guys approach this?
Well, I think overall it is a very rare thing. But again, it goes down to those personal circumstances. We're speaking with that individual regularly. We should know, or we do know, about what they're looking for from a personal circumstance. So they might be looking for a very good contracting option, but we know about their family situation. We know where they're looking to work. We know how they're looking to work. And sometimes if we come across an opportunity that is a permanent opportunity that seems to tick all the boxes, we just simply have a conversation with the person and say, look, we understand that you are looking for a contracting option. However, we have this, it is such and such, this is the location, this is the client, this is what they're looking to do, these are the long-term options. What are your thoughts on that? And just simply pose the question to them, and they could quite easily turn around and say, thanks very much, but no thanks. Or they could be quite willing and open to say, you know, I'm actually quite keen to hear a little bit more. And if that gives us that option for the, try and put them into that process and give them an opportunity to have a conversation with a client about that, then hopefully that will work fairly well.
it is quite the rare move to go from contract to perm. And you've certainly got your pros and cons that I'm sure we'll speak about a little bit more throughout this. But internally within our business too, so Alec's team sits right next to my SharePoint perm team, and we know what type of contract opportunities his desk has going on. He knows what type of permanent opportunities we have going on as well. So there's, we're always throwing things this way and say we've got somebody that ideally would be looking for a long-term contract in, say, Dallas. Those opportunities may be limited, but we certainly have 5 permanent opportunities. If he's doing the same type of work, maybe that's an opportunity to be interested in. Like Alec was saying, there's no reason, we always mention this to our candidates, just hear us out on the opportunity. We get told no 100 times a day, 101 times is not going to hurt our feelings, and that's quite all right. But we want, our job is to give our candidates, whether it's contract or perm, as many opportunities on the table for them to choose from as we possibly can.
Talking about opportunities, let's say, for example, somebody's looking to go permanent, and that right opportunity is maybe a few 100 miles or 1,000 miles away. Is there a change in attitude from employers in the way that we can connect and work so remotely?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, it should definitely be encouraged, right? Especially with this Office 365 world.
Yeah, if you're working with Office 365 or SharePoint on-prem with a mobile capability, businesses need to start having that conversation to allow these candidates who don't want to necessarily move, but they want a permanent position.
Yeah.
Telecommuting is becoming more and more of a conversation, and virtual teams is becoming more and more of a conversation. And those best IT professionals or developers who can demonstrate their success in being in a virtual team will be those candidates that you will want to hire. Like, bend over backwards to get them hired.
And it was quite interesting in the last session that the guy that's presenting Office 365 groups, Christoph, was saying that in the future, what was it, like 40% of people will be contract in, so we're kind of going to have to go down that model anyway.
Yeah, it's great to see Office 365 take hold to allow organizations to have distributed groups all over the country or around the world, for that matter, so that you're getting the best resources for the best task.
Absolutely. Paden and Alec, have you noticed this change in approach to remote working in the United States?
It's certainly something that we are seeing a shift in, and as it's more of an educational task for us as well when speaking to businesses, and I think it really depends on what type of business you're working with and have ever had experience there. But as you were saying before, is that with the technologies, if you want the best person within that certain, even when you're looking at a niche within the technology, when you're looking within Azure, or you're looking within Office 365, with the rapid rate that these products are coming out and the changes being made and companies are looking to do upgrades, especially on the enterprise level, your candidate pool becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Right? It's one thing when we start looking at generalist roles, when we get very specific in terms of an upgrade, a migration, or a new implementation. It's one of those. It's kind of the nature of the beast, right? You have to be open to it at some point, and it's a trend that we're starting to see shift in. Appendix 4 in the documents that you guys have access to, you'll see a breakdown of our individuals that were surveyed on the amount of work they do from home. That certainly has drastically changed here in the U.S. over the past 5 years, I would say, at least since I've been in the business. And certainly within the U.S., our cities are so much further apart when you look at the mileage between. So when that candidate pool becomes smaller and smaller, it's one of those things that if businesses are not open to it yet, they certainly will have to become to a certain degree if they want the best talent that can do what they're looking to be done. Yeah,
Paden and I were both at the Ignite conference last year, and we were sat just a few feet away from Satya Nadella, and on his keynote, I think one of the first things that he said was mobile first, cloud first. And I think that's been something that Microsoft has been banging the drum on now for quite a period of time. You look at the adverts that they have on the commercials that they have on television, something fairly similar, right? So what we found is that this is the way that Microsoft is going. It's pushing people to the cloud. It's pushing people to mobile. Therefore, businesses need to understand that, and they need to be able to react and adapt to that. Because like I say, from our perspective as recruiters, our job is to make sure that all of our clients that we work with can have access to as big a candidate pool as possible, to give them the option. And if that client particularly turns around and says, look, they need to be on site Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in the middle of the country somewhere, and it's hours from anywhere, that candidate pool is probably going to be non-existent. And then you've got some huge organisations that are very desirable to work for, saying you can work from home, you can work from your back garden. You know, why do you think that Florida is one of the most populated places with SharePoint contractors? Because everybody that I speak to is sat in their pool in their back garden having barbecue doing their work. Yeah, it's a huge thing. And our salary survey, like I said, Appendix 4, something that we've collated over a huge number of years now, and it's saying that, I don't know if you have it in front of you there, Andy, but about 35% of people are spending less than 1 day a week working from home, 16% 1 day a week, 8% 2 days a week, less than 5% 3 days a week, 3% at 4 days, 10.5% at 5 days a week, and 22% of people are never ever working remotely. So what that's saying is that there's a huge drive here for cloud technologies to be mobile, to have that ability to work from home. A lot of businesses are still yet to pick up on that, so what we want to try and do is educate people on that as to how the market is changing.
And I think the premise of these technologies too is to give you access to what you need from anywhere, not just in your office. So certainly the way that that's implemented, and the process of getting that to the users should certainly follow suit as well. And I think one of the bigger misconceptions around remote work is that it doesn't all have to be remote either. There's certainly the need for face-to-face interaction, in-person interaction, should I say, and that's certainly understood. But the majority of what people listening to this this presentation will know is that the majority of their job can be done from that home office. And it's just about that shift of that that mindset as well.
I don't know about you guys, but I found that from my own observations, these are not expert stats at all, right? So let's not pretend they are. But I think that new startups and fairly young businesses are very kind of open to this. It's almost like that there's a lot of businesses these days that are born in the cloud, and therefore they're used to running their infrastructure that way. They're used to the people connecting that way. Do we think that there's a risk that if old and more traditional, matured organizations don't adopt this kind of flexible working lifestyle, that they're going to lose the new talent, especially millennials coming through the system, to these more kind of younger, fresher organizations already working in that way?
Well, I think from a SharePoint perspective, having gone through every single generation of it, even having one of the first BPOS, installations, I've seen it where if I didn't have that cloud opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to gain those skills to rapidly advance in my own personal career. But then what I've started to notice was that because I became more productive, I became more popular. And so that's, from a recruiting standpoint, 10 recruiters a day saying, hey, come work for me, and I'm like, do you do telecommute? And they're like, no. And so I'm not going to go somewhere if they're going to do that. They're going to make me sit in an office all day.
Sure.
Collaboration in the cloud especially allows that opportunity for your brain to be hyper creative and imaginative and innovative, and then you get your work done because you have that opportunity to be free in your own mind. And I think a lot of businesses don't see that benefit. Yes, there is a point in time that you have to, because of certain types of regulatory constraints.
Sure.
You can't exactly take loan documentation home,
I should stop doing that.
Yeah, that'd be a bad thing. So there's a time, there's a place for it, but to give that opportunity for teams to be able to say, hey, I want to work from home 1 day a week, doing different tasks that may not touch personal, private information, that could be governmentally regulated. And, you should let that happen. You should let it happen.
No, I completely agree. And Alec and Paden, in your experience, have you found that organizations are struggling to retain talent because of the exact reasons that Christina's just been talking about?
Yeah, that's right, and that's something that we're going to touch on a little bit more on Thursday as well, when we're looking at staff retention specifically. But ultimately, yeah, it is a key factor. I mean, just to briefly touch on that, you naturally would have thought, what are the reasons why people leave jobs? Money, 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 money. Actually, the top 5 reasons as to why people leave an organisation has got nothing to do with money whatsoever. Right? So what we're saying is that one of those key factors is about working conditions. If we're taking those statistics there, more than 50% of the workforce has got no access to remote working at all. We pretty much break our system sometimes. If I was to put a message on LinkedIn saying I'm looking for somebody for a fully remote working opportunity, my email inbox basically breaks from the number of responses that we get. Because people are interested in that and people are looking to move into that. So yeah, naturally that is a factor of why some people look to leave, but we can touch on that a little bit more information on Thursday. But there's some information in the PDF document there that people want to have a quick read over as to why people do move on.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Now, one of the things I want to touch on in this session is the fact that traditionally organizations have siloed people, or I should say pigeonholed people into 3 typical categories, and there's IT pro, developer, and architect. Mm-hmm. No, I'm a contractor myself. Some people would say that I'm a mercenary. I dispute that. But as part of my mercenary role, I must admit, over the years, I've seen those job titles changing. Christina, do you see that reflected in the kind of learning experience area?
Not necessarily in terms of the learning, because we're still in that disciplined mode of IT professional versus developer, versus IW worker, information worker. And it helps us to focus the learning on that. However, in the real world, a SharePoint individual, because I don't want to use a title per se, because of this small pool of people, they have to know both. They have to know how to architect. They have to know how to administer. They have to know how to develop, or at least be able to speak enough geek to get the right contractor workers in their place of employment. Otherwise, their farm that they just built, their baby, is gonna, deteriorate. So it's really important that somebody who wants to advance in their career does not allow themselves to be pigeonholed. Mm-hmm. And that is a big conversation, and a lot of times when, in the past, before I came to Microsoft, when I would talk to recruiters who had no idea what SharePoint was, and they didn't understand the differences in the roles, it's up to the professional that's being asked to say, that's more of an administrator role. You might need to change that. That's going to be a different price point than if you're saying, I would need a developer. It is a big difference on the skill set that you need. And it really takes somebody who understands that product to be that voice. And a number of people that have contacted me over the years have said, well, can I keep you as a resource just to, validate that this is an administration job versus an architect role or a developer? Because you're saying a developer, but you really need a designer. That's like a lot less in pay, You need somebody who's good with content management, not necessarily somebody who can stand up a full farm.
Sure, yeah, and I completely agree. And it's something I want to ask Alex Paden about is that how many circumstances do they have where clients come to them and say, I want an architect, but the architect's actually playing around in SQL and keeping the farm alive, so it's more like an administrator, or I want an IT pro. Do they actually understand what they want, and if they don't, how do you guys help them through that process?
Yeah, it is. I wish we had $1 every time that happened, because I could not agree with you more there, Christina. It is unbelievable how many times that happens. I think we take a very simple example, and SharePoint development. Okay, a client says to me, Alec, I need a SharePoint developer. All right. What's that? What is it? I can probably break that down into 3 or 4 different categories. Are we talking about your traditional C# .NET backend customization type? Are we talking about keeping things very simple, out of the box, more configuration? Are we talking about the SharePoint app model? What is it that we're talking about? We're saying SharePoint developer. Now that's part of the issue that we're having as an industry, and that's why we try and do these types of conversations to give people information, because, like I said, recruiters are not technical. Right? We have no idea. A lot of the people out there, the vast majority of people out there, are sat there at the end of the phone, taking down a job spec, and they're just writing, and they don't know the technologies at all to be able to dispute that. So what the client is then doing is saying, Alec, what I need is this. That person then goes away, finds this, sends it over, and then for some reason they're not linking in together. Because actually what they need is now something that's completely different. And we're now starting to see this shift within the market. It's had an effect on our roles, because when it comes to salaries, when it comes to price points, like you say there's a huge difference between development and design. There's a huge difference between architecture, infrastructure architecture, solutions architecture, enterprise architecture, governance, information management, all these different types of things. And when it comes to job titles, especially in the permanent side of the world, job title can be a huge thing. But in the contracting market, it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. What's a SharePoint technologist? I've worked with clients that have requested for a SharePoint technologist. That was a job title. We had no idea. So it's all about trying to work with whoever it is you work with, whether it's your internal recruitment team, whether it's your HR department, whether it's the vendors that you already have relationships with. You need to make sure that you have a technical person delivering to that individual on the phone or internal in that company, explaining to them in detail what they need to look for. Because then otherwise there's a reason why we speak with clients and they go, why did you not get in touch with me 6 months ago? We're still trying to find somebody.
When we talk about it, certainly more in detail on Thursday too, about what you're looking for in a recruiter, whether that be internal or external. And as Alec was mentioning, those phone calls, they need to be conversations, not just that technical person or the hiring manager telling the recruiter what that is. We can read the job description by that, and we tend to steer clear of those job descriptions in a sense, because we want to understand how that role fits within the business. If the job description or the job title may be completely different from what they're actually looking for. And in SharePoint, it's certainly changed over the past few years from what it traditionally was, but with your newer emerging technologies that are really being pushed into the cloud, Office 365 and Azure, those hiring for the roles are still figuring out kind of as they go what they need and what that means and what that looks like, and they leverage us to help do that as well, but it really centers around the conversations that we have and what is that they're looking for and what we can provide and what we've worked with in the past. Coming with just a general Azure architect, what is that? Is it infrastructure related? Is it platform related? Where are you guys at with Azure now, and where do you want to get to? Has it been implemented? Do you know what it is? So there's a number of those questions that are conversation drivers that need to be had as opposed to just being told.
Well, it's also up to the individuals who are being approached, too. That's one thing that a lot of people fail to do, is that, oh, there's recruiters, I'm going to get a job, great, and then they get frustrated because it's the wrong role for them.
Sure.
They don't feel that they could be empowered to have this voice of being able to say, no, I am flat out a developer. I love to write code for SharePoint, or I love to write apps for SharePoint. Like, that's me, but we've got this great architect position. No, I don't want that. Let's focus on what I really want. And that job description does not give me this sense that it's a developer position. So that's more of an administrator. So let's pass. And because while the market has this weird ebb and flow for SharePoint or for Office 365 administrators or Azure developers or whatever, a lot of times it's either feast or famine for contractors or those who are trying to seek a long-term engagement. And so they don't feel that they can say it. So I encourage those people who are watching, it's okay to push the envelope and work with the recruiter to get the right language for the right job.
Do you think there's an over-expectation sometimes with the job roles? Because some of the stuff that comes to me, they want Azure, they want administration, architecture, and they want me to clean the floor on the way out. And I'm like, really, guys, you know?
And then they cough at the price.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, before I came to Microsoft, I was asked one day, you know, like, do you know Azure, and do you know how to write code for apps, and can you, you know, deploy SharePoint all at the same time? I'm like, yes, and then I provided my rate, and they're like, well, it's only X dollar amount. And I'm like, are you high? Like, this cannot work. Like, that's for one of these fields,
Sure.
not all of them. If you want all of them, you have to pay for all of them. And so it goes back to the recruiter and the business that's trying to work with an individual or a candidate to really make those clear definitions.
Alex and Paden, do you guys find this is a common occurrence and something that you have to challenge your clients with?
Every day. Every day.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
It was really really interesting to hear that there, because that's part of the reason why we want to do these types of engagements, because there is thousands and thousands of businesses out there that are not aware as to how this market is changing and what is happening. You know, you think of the small little manufacturing organizations, these small little, you know, 10 to 20, 30 business people that don't have the biggest Microsoft platforms. They don't go to user groups. They don't get involved in conferences. They don't do research. They have no idea as to what happened. They think that what happened 7, 8 years ago is still exactly the same. All right. Now, part of the difficulty that we find is that we try to have as much education with the clients as possible. And if they, you know, I can openly say, and Paden can openly say this, and we're fortunate enough because we've got a lot of experience in this market, but we can have those honest conversations with the client where we've taken down a requirement, we find out what their rate is, we find out what their budget is, and go, that will not work. That simply will not work. Now, the difficulty that we find in the industry, specifically within the recruitment industry, which is something that we hopefully need to address, is that there's a lot of people out there that are just yes people. They'll get the job spec, they'll get the requirement, and they'll go, yeah, brilliant, not a problem. I'll send you over some resumes. I'll send you over some CV. And because the client then is getting something in their inbox, because they are then getting something from this other agency that has no idea what SharePoint is or what Office 365 is, they're thinking, well, there are people out there. There must be people out there because I've got them sat in my inbox. But actually what we find, and it happens all the time, is that once they start to have conversations with those people, they're completely miles away from what they needed.
Yeah.
And then eventually that's how we're able to secure quite a bit of business, is that they come back to us in the end and they go, actually, okay, what are your thoughts on this? So it's all about this education where we can try and educate the market based on information that we're getting as an organization, that organizations give us, that candidates give us. If we can give that feedback to people, hopefully we'll try and eradicate this down the line where the market will have those ebbs and flows, but we'll be able to react to it a lot better. Fingers crossed there.
Well, at the same time, remember that's what the whole point of this particular conference is too, is to collaborate. You have to be able to have that continuous conversation on every side of the board.
Right.
And that's what makes it magical.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Guys, let's assume the unicorn for a minute. Rocks up and says, I know exactly what I want. It's an IT pro, it's a dev, and these are the kind of responsibilities that I want them to have. But I have no idea how much I should be paying them. How would that work if a client came to you? How would you guide them within that salary range or whatnot?
Yeah, certainly, and I mean, it certainly starts with, excuse me, the years of experience that you're looking for and what you're looking to accomplish. But we, as Alec had mentioned in the beginning, is over the course of the 10 years, through the placements that we've done, the candidates that we work with, our salary surveys provided a lot of core, data-backed, summaries that we've come to. And you'll particularly find the salary rates that are in Appendix 9 of what's available. And we've got that broken down into different categories, from consultant category, technical, functional split, then techno-functional, and then looking at developers, pre-sales, technical architects, solutions architects. And then we've broken that into 3 sections, essentially. We've got your junior section, so you're 0 right out of school to 3 years, we'll say. Then your mid-level, which is your 3 to 6-ish range. and then 6+, say 6 to 10 for senior roles that we've got allocated there. So it's particularly in the U.S. Your location certainly is dependent upon that, based on cost of living. What other benefits are provided by an organization will certainly impact the salary ranges, some bonuses as well. But if you look through Appendix 9, what you'll see, and the trends that you see, is that as you get to that mid-level and senior level, the salaries that are being asked and that are being paid will start to increase as you develop a techno-functional skill set. So as we were speaking, gaining the consultancy experience, the ability to not only write the code, develop the apps that are being asked, but you can actually go out and work with the users and understand the requirements better. The more of that mix of skill set that you have, the higher the salaries that we're seeing, because you can play multiple roles within the business and you're not pigeonholed into one area. The roles that we work are very product specific, and you need to be very well versed within your product, but the rates will be going up. The rates as well as the salaries will go up as you have additional expertise in other product areas. Say that be Office 365 and Azure, or business intelligence and SharePoint. Those things that tend to go hand in hand. Your perceived value in the market and the salaries you're being paid at those levels will certainly rise with that experience level.
Is it fair to say that your clients can come to you and say, okay, we know what the base salary is for this position right now, maybe it's a junior in that kind of 0 to 3 year stage. Is it fair that they could expect you to provide some data to say that maybe in 3 to 5 years and so on, this is kind of like the area they should be within pay in terms of remuneration as their skills develop and responsibilities?
So it just got a little bit crackly. You just repeat that again, please, Andy?
Yeah, sure. I was saying so, and I've got to be careful because we're on a 4-minute countdown now. Is it fair to say that clients you can set an expectation with them that although we understand what the salary is today for somebody in, let's say, 0 to 3 years of their permanent position with the client, that where that candidate should be salary-wise in the future?
It's difficult for us to be able to comment on that simply because we don't know what's going to happen in the market. Recruitment is a very reactive industry, so we need to wait for Microsoft to implement the product, businesses to implement that technology, for then the request of those skill sets to come. So we'll find that although SharePoint 2016 is out and about now, we're still waiting on our first 2016 skill set requirement to come through. It's going to take a little bit of a while. So it's difficult for us to foresee the future, but what we can see, and one thing that we can give advice to people on, is that regardless of the technology, regardless of the skill set, regardless of the ability, there are certain things that you can do as an individual to make sure that you're ahead of the game and you're ahead of the market. That's making sure that your CV is up to date, your resume is on point. What we find is that in the permanent market, you're probably looking around about 2 to 3 pages. In the contracts market, on average, around about 3 to 5. Clients never want to look at 11-page CV. They don't anyways, and that's a fact. So don't make it that long. Keep it short and sweet. Make sure that you give yourself as much availability as possible when it comes to interviewing. If you're open to interviewing and you're actively keen to do that, give yourself as much availability as possible, because you have no idea how many interviews can take place between now and next Friday when you're available. The client might have already offered somebody else. So give yourself as much availability as possible. And finally, just make sure that you're open-minded as much to go and look for different things that you might not necessarily be have thought of. Because this cloud technology, because of mobile, it's going to give people access to a whole new range of possibilities and opportunities that they never would have previously considered. So just be open to that. I think that'll probably be the 3 pieces of advice, regardless of technology, regardless of skill set, regardless of what's going to happen in the future. There are specific recruitment trends that people can work towards. It's going to make sure that they're ahead of the market. They're going to make sure that they're commanding their rate that they should be earning, the market rate, and they're going to keep themselves ahead of the competition to make sure that they continue their career in the path that they want to go.
And the things outside of business-sponsored events too is just self-education, staying on top of the latest trends, attending conferences like this, getting involved in the user group communities. There's no better source of information than the user group communities on what's going on and what your colleagues and what your peers are doing within the market. Is certainly one of the the fastest ways to information that's ever changing in the marketplace is just self-education through that as well. Certifications, online tutorials, things like that, that are accessible to everybody no matter where you are. No matter what happens with the technologies, if you're constantly involved in that, you'll start staying ahead of the curve as well.
That's fantastic, guys, and we're pretty much on the 1-minute countdown now. So I just want to remind people that the stats that we've been talking about today, we didn't cover absolutely everything, but could you tell people at home how they can get access to your salary survey and all the comprehensive insights that you've gained from that?
Yeah, so I believe we're looking to try and get the salary surveys out to everybody that's subscribed. There is I believe the PDF document has been uploaded where they normally download documentation for the previous sessions throughout the day. We have an attachment in there which we've been discussing, Appendix 9, 10, etc. Have a look on there. That's basically a shortened version of the salary survey, and it's also giving people information on contracting hourly rates for the US, day rates for the UK, salary rates for the US, and just some overall bit of general information that people can go away, take away, share with their friends, share with their colleagues, share with their business, and hopefully we can all become a nice collaborative organisation.
Well, that's fantastic, and thank you very much, guys. We're out of time now, so I just want to extend a special thank you to Alec and Paden for joining us live from New York, and for providing, excuse me, I'm ready for that coffee now, and for giving us some great insights into the market. Please do stick around, because in about 15 minutes' time, Christina and myself are going to be taking us forward into part 2. Christina, you just wanted to give a brief intro?
Basically, what we're going to start discussing is the learning process, how you can either level up or gain some new skills. There's a plethora of different opportunities and different avenues for you to be able to learn, and we're going to go into that.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for joining us. Please do remember there are many other tracks happening as well, and everything will be available online on demand not long after the conference.